So obviously we're here in Wisconsin. It was a crucial state for you, one of the ones that put you over the top. It was the same for Trump when he won in 2016. And he was actually here last week on his day off from the Stormy Daniels trial. He told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Mr. President, quote, "If everything's honest, I'd gladly accept the results of the election." And then he continued, though, with this: "If it's not, you have to fight for the right of the country." How seriously do you take that threat?
Seriously, just like I did January 6th. The guy is not a Democrat with a small d. I mean, he is the idea. Look, you can't only love your country when you win, number one. How many court cases do they have? Supreme Court cases. They all said this is totally legitimate election. This is Trump. I mean, it's saying whether he may not accept the outcome of the election. I promise you he won't.
Promise that he won't.
He won't.
So,
which is dangerous. Look, I travel around the world with other world leaders. You know what they all say? Not a joke. 80% of them, after we have a major meeting, they go, "We've got to win. My democracy to stay. Their democracy to stay." Because when you think of the things he's saying, if I'm reelected, if he's reelected the president, he's going to make sure his attorney general prosecutes those he tells them to prosecute. And if he doesn't, he's going to fire him on the first. Not just the first. No. He said this about prosecution across the board. He's going to be, I'm your retribution. What president's ever said anything like this stuff? But he means it. Going to wipe out the changes we made in Medicare, change we made in terms of drug prices, change we made. He's going to wipe it all out. And then he's going to put in a 10% tax, which is going to increase everybody's cost. The average American costs $1,500 a year. I mean, listen to what he's saying.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Today has been a great day, okay? I am drunk on liberal tears, okay? I'm drunk on liberal tears. So I think that it is appropriate to go ahead and top off our day of liberal tears with more liberal tears, okay? Because you have Joe Biden there in that interview basically trying to convince CNN and their liberal audience that Trump is such a big threat to democracy. I mean, this guy Biden, he seems to be struggling, right? He's struggling a lot to simply just talk about the issues, right? And because they are losing when it comes to Trump's cases and the fact that it seems like the ones that people actually care about aren't going to actually go to trial before the election. Now they're back to the whole democracy talk, okay? Trump is a threat to democracy, which really just means that Trump is a threat to the Democrats and their power. Because remember, democracy doesn't actually really mean democracy. It doesn't refer to our republic or anything like that. It actually refers to democracy TM, which again is the Democrats and their power. So when they talk about Trump being a threat to democracy, that's what they're really talking about, okay? And the Biden administration and the liberal media are going to be sorely disappointed to learn that all of their rhetoric, all the time they've spent talking about January 6th, obsessing over January 6th over the last 3 or 4 years, basically is not really going to help them win the election, because there is a very interesting pattern that is happening in polls, liberal polls, showing that, voters don't really give Biden an advantage when it comes to this whole democracy conversation. In fact, there was a poll that came out from PBS that showed that when you poll independents, they actually see Joe Biden as a bigger threat to democracy than Trump. And MSNBC was shocked by this finding in this poll, and I want to talk about it. So without further ado, roll the clip.
Another thing interesting in this polling was more independents said that they worry about President Biden weakening democracy than Trump, 53% to 42%. What do you make of this?
I find it shocking, honestly. I can't, make sense of that number. I wish I could. I wish I could have some really great insight to it. But I don't know if it's an outlier or not, because the other numbers with independents and Biden are going in the right direction. So that may be it. But also, just one thing I wanted to add on to what Basil said. This trial's not on TV. You guys do a great job reporting what's happening. But if there aren't those images coming out of the courthouse, people feel like they know this story. We've heard about it for a long time. So it doesn't surprise me that they're not interested.
Well, thank you both so much for being here, Basil Smith.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that, okay? Those are not the numbers that MSDNC wanted to see, okay? Their analysts are shocked that independent voters are saying, hey, I think this guy Biden is a greater threat to our democracy than Trump. But I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised at all, because anybody that is paying attention knows that Biden is a much greater threat to our republic than Trump, right? There's zero chance. I don't care how much these people fearmonger about Trump staying in office forever or, causing violence or whatever. There's not a chance that Trump is actually going to stay in office if he is elected, okay? He's only going to serve one term, and he's going to be done, okay? When they come out and talk about Trump being a dictator and bloodbath and all this other stuff, everybody knows that that's all out of context, okay? And people know this because the mainstream liberal media has focused on these things that Trump has said. They have purposely taken it out of context. And when people actually go back and listen to what Trump says, people are like, Trump didn't say that, right? That's not what he meant at all. And people can see this, okay? This is why the polls also find that the liberal media is a threat to democracy as well.
Now, as you're waking up, the results of a New York Times Siena College poll are showing that more than half of all registered voters see the mainstream media as a threat to democracy in the United States.
Americans are extremely more polarized, and polling continuously shows that. Our population gets news from vastly different sources. We don't agree on what the facts are.
Joining me live for a closer look at that New York Times Siena College poll is Dre Clark. Good morning, Dre.
Let's take a look at these poll numbers together here. According to this poll conducted of registered voters conducted by the New York Times and Siena College, 59% of voters see the media as a threat to democracy. 25% consider the threat to be minor, and the remaining 15% see no threat at all. Now, this is also very interesting and telling according to the poll. 87% of voters who supported former President Donald Trump in 2020, they view the media as a threat, while 33% of President Biden supporters and voters say the same thing. Now, the New York Times also noting that 14% of voters say political views reveal a lot about a person's character, whether they're a good person or a bad person. But 34% poll said it doesn't mean anything at all. Also, the poll revealing that nearly 1 in 5 political disagreements have hurt relationships among family members and friends.
Yeah, so again, unsurprising to me, considering the fact that I personally think that the mainstream liberal media is partially responsible for a lot of the domestic violence that we've seen in this country over the past few years from people mainly on the left, okay? I mean, whether it be the BLM riots, Antifa riots, the Roe v. Wade riots, now you have the pro-Palestine riots. A lot of this stuff is because of the media in their rhetoric, okay? And the fact that when left-wingers tend to commit acts of violence, the media kind of looks the other way, right? They try to justify it, which is what they've been doing at least for the past 3 or 4 years up until recently when the far-left communists got out of control, right? And they started criticizing Israel. Now, all of a sudden, they don't like it anymore, okay? But before all this, they were on board with it because it was something that helped Biden, right? Because they saw it as, well, this is hurting Trump, it's helping Biden, so therefore we're going to turn a blind eye to it. Yeah, so again, if you are an independent voter, aka if you are a critical thinker, okay, or you're on the right, and you see what's happening in this country as a result of the media, as a result of the Democrat rhetoric, you can't come out here and say that, oh, well, Trump is such a big threat to democracy, right? Versus Biden, who quite literally is trying to take away your free speech, okay? This guy supports banning social media apps on behalf of other countries, okay? Not to protect Americans from spying from China. No, that's not why they support it. They support it to protect from criticism against other countries, right? This is what Biden's doing. He tries to censor speech on social media unconstitutionally. Look at all the policies they promoted during the pandemic that also were very authoritarian. This guy frequently ignores the Supreme Court in their rulings, especially when it comes to student loan debt forgiveness. And then to top it all off, look at the political persecutions against Trump, again, with all of these cases falling apart, it has become a lot more clear, probably to the average person, that, hey, this stuff seems to be politically motivated, right? So I think that's why you're seeing these polls now come out and say that, well, Biden doesn't really have an advantage on this, despite the fact that the mainstream liberal media has put in so much effort and time trying to make it seem like, oh, Trump is such a big threat to democracy. He's going to be a dictator. Our whole country's at stake, right? Our democracy's at stake if Trump gets elected. Well, again, Biden's not doing a great job of making him and the Democrats seem like they're not authoritarians, when, again, they're openly authoritarian. In fact, if you didn't have the mainstream liberal media on their side, I think that those numbers would look a lot worse, right? I think that those numbers would be devastating for Biden, because there's no way that you can pay attention to what's actually going on in this country and think that, oh, Trump is the real threat. No, Trump is not the threat, okay? It is Joe Biden. It is the guy in the White House, if you want to talk about the threats to our so-called democracy or the threats to our republic, okay, which is probably a more accurate way of describing our country and our government. So with that being said, again, MSNBC getting another reality check that their rhetoric, their propaganda is not working on critical thinkers in this country. And everything's falling apart, man. It really is. And it is glorious to watch these people cope and seethe over the fact that all of the propaganda is basically not working against Trump, right? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.